Imagine that you wake up tomorrow and your body no longer belongs to you. Imagine that you open your eyes and something slimy, something that shouldn't be part of you, is pulsating under your skin. You feel a tingling you can't explain, a tremor that climbs up your spine like an army of starving insects. And when you finally sit up, you discover that your arms have vanished, that your legs are now grotesque appendages, and that your voice is a screech that not even your mother would recognize. Imagine the absolute silence of that room, the smell of dampness, and the panic twisting in your stomach when you realize that no one will come to rescue you. Because no one rescues what is no longer useful. No one reaches out to someone who has become a nuisance. If you close your eyes, you will see it. It's not Gregor Samsa. It's you. You, turned into an unrecognizable monster, while the others look at each other with that expression of disgust you never dared to imagine. Does it seem far away? Does it sound like fantasy? Let me tell you something that will hurt you more than any physical metamorphosis. You are only one accident, one illness, one mistake away from becoming that which everyone pretends not to see. That creature that was once needed and now is just dead weight. The body can transform into a monster, yes, but what truly becomes repulsive is not your skin, but the perception others have of you when you no longer produce anything they can consume. Want proof? Think of the last time you saw someone collapse, lose everything, become dependent on others' pity. What did you feel? Compassion, yes, but also relief. The dirty relief of knowing it wasn't you. The cowardly relief of confirming that you were still useful, that you still belonged to that secret club of those who can still give something in return. That's what no one tells you. We all walk down a narrow hallway where one misstep turns us into parasites. And each of us carries inside that atrocious fear of waking up transformed into a burden, into one more mouth to feed, into a shame that must be hidden behind the closed door of a room. Kafka's Metamorphosis is not a story about a man turning into an insect. It is a prophecy about you, about what will happen to you when you stop justifying your existence through your usefulness, when your family, your friends, your partner discover that you no longer contribute anything to them. And then they will look at you with that mixture of horror and annoyance that no amount of emotional makeup in the world can disguise. This is the part no one wants to hear. Monstrosity doesn't begin in the shell. It begins in the eyes of those who watch you. There is no more devastating transformation than becoming irrelevant. Do you feel it? That chill running down your back. That stab of anxiety telling you this is not a story, it's a mirror. And now tell me, what will you do when you have to look yourself in the face and discover that the creature you so despised was always there, waiting its turn to come out? And here comes the part you would rather not hear. But I'm going to throw it at you without anesthesia. When you no longer serve, when you become that uncomfortable presence no one wants to admit exists, you begin to experience the most silent form of violence. Not explicit aggression, not shouting or direct threats, but something much more devastating. Indifference. No one prepares you for the moment you cease to be someone who contributes and become a shadow tolerated out of obligation. No one trains you to endure that empty gaze that pierces you when they ask if you're still there, as if your breathing were a nuisance that lasts too long. And yet, there you are, wishing it would end quickly, begging that at least they have the courage to tell you to your face that they would prefer you to disappear. But the cruelest thing is that indifference does not appear all at once. It comes slowly like moisture seeping into the walls until everything smells like rot. First, the uncomfortable silences. Then, the gestures that escape unintentionally. A sigh when they see you, a grimace of annoyance when you ask for help. And later, the certainty that your presence no longer matters, that your voice is background noise no one hears. Do you know what happens when indifference settles in? You convince yourself that you no longer deserve to be seen. And it is then that you start to crumble inside, questioning whether you were ever truly important or if it was all a lie sustained by utility. It's fascinating and terrifying how the human mind adapts to this process of devaluation. At first, you fight with all your might to prove you are still needed. You strive to find new ways to be useful, to justify your space, to earn a little attention. But when every attempt is ignored or treated as a nuisance, something breaks. Your dignity shrinks, your will dissolves, and your identity becomes a weak echo of what it once was. Kafka knew this before psychology gave it a name. He knew that when usefulness evaporates, the only thing left is guilt, that dirty guilt that tells you you are occupying a place that doesn't belong to you. I want you to think about this. How many people do you know who keep pretending they have a purpose just to avoid facing the truth that they are no longer needed? How many people live in a perpetual theater of useless gestures and superficial conversations just to delay the evidence that they have become dispensable? The fear of irrelevance is so powerful that we are capable of betraying ourselves just to maintain a facade of importance. The irony is that this desperate struggle moves no one, because when you no longer serve, your effort doesn't inspire respect, only discomfort. And there is something even more perverse: the way society disguises its contempt with courtesy. They fill you with empty words, phrases that sound compassionate but are graves disguised as compliments. Don't worry, it will pass. You'll see how soon you'll recover. Take your time. These are the epitaphs of those who want you to step aside without making too much noise. They are the polished version of a brutal message. We don't know what to do with you, and we prefer not to look. If you think I'm exaggerating, look around you. See how many elderly people languish in nursing homes, set aside like broken furniture. See how many sick people live trapped in the guilt of needing others. See how many unemployed endure every day the poison of feeling superfluous. No, this is not a science fiction story. It is the true metamorphosis, the passage from person to burden, from subject to object, from life to nuisance. Do you know what's the most devastating? That no one talks about this out loud. We prefer to sweeten the narrative, invent euphemisms, pretend that everything is a natural cycle. But behind every sugar-coated phrase hides the same truth that Kafka vomited in his story. When you stop producing, affection fades. Identity becomes an empty shell that people avoid touching. And you, who right now are listening to me with that mix of discomfort and curiosity, should ask yourself something no one else dares to ask. If tomorrow you lose your function, who will stay by your side? Who will remain when your presence is no longer profitable? Because there, in that unanswered question, lies the most primal anxiety a human can feel. Not the fear of death, not the fear of failure, but the certainty that one day you will wake up turned into something everyone wants to forget. This is the real monster, not the legs or the shell, not the deformed body or the broken voice. The true monster is the indifference that settles in the hearts of those who once said they loved you. That silent metamorphosis that turns affection into weariness, respect into pity, companionship into obligation. And the darkest part of all, is that you yourself will end up convinced you deserve that fate. Because when everyone looks at you as if you were less than human, you end up believing that you are. And while you sink into that certainty, something even more disturbing happens. You discover that your own mind begins to conspire against you. Because the metamorphosis is not only external, it also happens inside. Every thought that once kept you standing becomes distorted. Every memory of your worth is contaminated by the suspicion that maybe it was never real. And you start to wonder if your identity was always built on a shared illusion, a collective lie that worked as long as you contributed something useful to others' machinery. When everything collapses, your brain needs to find explanations, any explanation, even the most ruthless. Thus is born the most toxic internal dialogue you will ever have. That voice that repeats to you that you were a fraud, that your worth always depended on what you could do for others and not on who you were. Do you notice it? That voice doesn't sound so distant, because all of us, in some dark corner, harbor the terror of discovering that our existence depends on staying functional. And if you ever cross that invisible line, if you ever go from being necessary to irrelevant, you will learn another brutal lesson. The most heartbreaking loneliness is not the one lived in an empty room, but the one that happens when you are surrounded by people pretending you still matter. There is a detail that almost no one notices when reading the Metamorphosis. It's not just that Gregor transforms into an insect, it's that his family, in their own metamorphosis, change roles. They go from needing him to enduring him. And you believe you are immune. You convince yourself that this will never happen to you because you have strong bonds, authentic relationships, people who love you for who you are. But if Kafka's story proves anything, it's that affection is always under suspicion. That even the strongest relationships have a microscopic crack that expands when usefulness disappears. And if you still think I'm exaggerating, look at any deep crisis, economic collapse, prolonged illness, the loss of the status that defined you. See how people change faces, how their priorities reorder, how their affection becomes increasingly selective. There is something fascinating and cruel in this mechanism. Life shows you that most of what you believed unconditional has an expiration date. They call it pragmatism. They call it survival. But deep down, it is fear. Fear of being contaminated by your failure. Fear of discovering that your fate may be a mirror of their own future. I want you to imagine for a moment that everything for which you are valued today, your talent, your strength, your money, your ability to solve problems, evaporates overnight. I want you to visualize the awkward conversations, the avoided looks, the visits that become more and more infrequent until they disappear. Life strips you down with exquisite cruelty and then shows you the truth that no one admits in public. When you cannot give anything, most will not stay to keep you company. But here is something even more disturbing than indifference: the relief of those who leave. Because when you disappear from the equation, when you are no longer a living reminder of the fragility of existence, those who once surrounded you feel a miserable, almost animal relief. It is the peace of thinking they have been freed from the possibility of becoming you. And that relief is so dark that no one ever admits it. But if you tune your ear, you can hear it in every sigh of the one who walks away while you stay behind. Do you know what disturbs most about all this? That even you will end up grateful that they leave. Because when everyone starts behaving as if your presence were a shared guilt, you prefer abandonment to that pity that humiliates you. And so you reach the final phase of the metamorphosis, self-degradation. that point at which you accept that your disappearance would be a favor to everyone. The human mind is capable of convincing itself of the darkest ideas when the environment validates that narrative. And while you listen to this, you may think this is a sad story that only happens to others, that you, by some invisible privilege, are exempt. But that is the most dangerous fantasy, because no one is safe from the metamorphosis of irrelevance. No one. You can build the most prestigious career, have the strongest network, enjoy recognition that today seems eternal, but when you can no longer give anything in return, the story is rewritten. People cannot bear to witness decay. They need to believe there will always be a form of usefulness, a function that justifies your existence. And when that runs out, the idea that we are indispensable collapses. If right now you feel a lump in your throat, it is because you are perceiving what you have always silently known. Every human bond, at its rawest level, is based on exchange, sometimes of affection, sometimes of resources, sometimes of recognition. But exchange, in the end. When the balance breaks, when you stop contributing something tangible, the bond is laid bare, and most don't know what to do with that naked version of the relationship. And then comes the most disconcerting paradox. The more you try to prove you can still be useful, the more obvious your desperation becomes. And desperation is contagious, uncomfortable, uncomfortably human. Kafka gave us the clearest mirror. We fear not the monster so much as discovering that its reflection is one step away from us. If you ever believed that Gregor's Metamorphosis was a grotesque fable, look closely. Maybe you have already begun to crawl without realizing it. And when you think there can be no deeper descent, the last twist appears, the most perverse of all. You begin to justify the way they treat you. It is the moment when your mind surrenders and accepts the narrative of others. You begin to believe that your existence only made sense if you generated a benefit, and that without that usefulness, your presence is a burden that deserves to be set aside. You find yourself apologizing for bothering, excusing yourself for breathing, thanking for crumbs of attention as if they were grand gestures. And now that we've made it this far, before we continue, I want to present the following to you. Our book, The Formula of Awakening, is now available. Do you feel like there's something inside you that wants to awaken, but you don't know where to start? Then I invite you to transform your way of thinking, and with it, your way of living. Discover who you can become. Start today. The link to get the ebook is in the first pinned comment of this video. Grab your copy now at a great price. With that said, let's continue with the video. This is the quietest metamorphosis. Not that of the body, nor even of status, but of the spirit. When you convince yourself that your disappearance would be more comfortable for everyone, the monster finishes devouring you inside. And here is where most stories end, with a thick silence, with a protagonist dissolving into nothingness while everyone else continues with their lives. But I am not going to give you that easy way out, because there is something Kafka did not write, and that you need to hear right now. The usefulness others project onto you was never the measure of your worth. No one can amputate your dignity unless you voluntarily hand it over. Metamorphosis is not inevitable. It is the result of a mind that stops fighting for its own meaning. You can lose your strength, your productive capacity, your influence. You can be left with nothing to offer a world that feeds on transactions. But as long as you keep breathing, as long as you keep thinking, you have something no outside observer can buy or take away: your identity. The real challenge is not to keep your place when you are useful. It is to keep it when everything you gave has evaporated, and only what you are remains, without embellishments or excuses. Who are you when you cannot give anything? What value do you have when everything is reduced to your bare consciousness? The answer to that question you will not find in any applause, nor in the approval of those who once walked away. That answer is a wild territory traveled alone, an inner journey that very few dare to undertake because it is uncomfortable, because it demands giving up the illusion that we are worth more the more we produce. If you have made it this far, it means something inside you has been stirred. Maybe an uncomfortable memory, maybe the echo of that fear you have always wanted to silence. Today I want to invite you not to close this door, not to use this video as mere passing entertainment. Ask yourself with brutal honesty, if tomorrow you woke up irrelevant in everyone's eyes, who would stay? And even more important, would you stay with yourself, or would you also run away? I propose something. Write in the comments the phrase, "The monster is me," if you have the courage to acknowledge that we all carry that latent metamorphosis. Subscribe if you want to keep exploring these abysses most prefer to ignore. Here we won't pretend everything is beautiful nor sugarcoat the truth. We will look straight at what others hide. And if you ever doubt your worth when you are no longer useful, remember this: even a body that everyone considers monstrous can harbor a free mind. And that freedom, although no one cares, will always be yours. See you on the next journey to the darkest part of the human. Or maybe we won't see each other. Maybe, like Gregor, you will stay there, trapped in your room. But if you decide to open the door, I will be here. Until then, may the silence be gentle with you.